Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build a Steyr Heavy Car. I'm not sure if it should be Steyr or Steyr. I would default to say Steyr, but it sounds a bit less German, so let's go with Steyr. Anyway, it's been a while since I've done anything in 15mm scale, and this seemed like a good choice. On the front of the box, we see some art depicting a couple of Steyrs, late and early versions, cruising with the top down. On the back of the box, we have a simple painting guide, which suggests using Fulero colours. It also tells us that the pack contains 5 of these cars, but today I'll be building 1. Inside the box, surprise surprise, 5 identical sprues. There are plenty of parts here, but you will only be able to build 1 vehicle per sprue. I'm sure some of the leftover bits could be used to model damaged or destroyed vehicles, or maybe, with a lot of creative camouflage, hidden vehicles, like maybe where you can only see the side of the vehicle poking out of a bush or something. The parts are quite well detailed, though obviously it is a wargaming kit in a small scale, so it's pretty unlikely to compare favourably to a super detailed display piece, but it does look pretty good. The moulding is nice and neat, and while there is going to be some cleanup required, it's not going to be excessive. You can see there are some stress marks in the plastic on all 5 of my sprues, and I'm not sure if all boxings are like this, or if something just happened to my box in particular. It doesn't seem to have caused any damage or deformation, and once the models are primed, you won't see it, so it's probably not really a big deal. The instructions come with this sprue guide, which tells you which parts are for which variant of the vehicle, of which this kit can make 4, though really it's only 2 variants. You get those variants with the top up or down. The side with the instructions is, well, instruction-y, and these instructions are simple, but to be fair, this is not an especially complicated kit, so it doesn't need much more than this. Okay, let's glue some bits of plastic together. I start by gluing the frame part onto the floor part. This is pretty simple really, though I did notice there wasn't quite as much area making contact, and thus being bonded together as it seemed, and it came apart a bit when I applied pressure to one end. Not a real problem, I just added a bit more glue and made it bond. Next, the sides. The left one here pretty much just drops right into place. I did have to apply a good bit of pressure to it, so maybe drop right into place isn't really the right term. I pushed it into place fairly easily. The right side required a little bit more effort. As you can see here, there's a raised bit on the inside that conflicts with the raised part of the floor. This won't go together properly no matter how much pressure you apply, so I clipped the side part back a bit. I am a little bit rough with it, I guess, and if you want you could sand this all nice and neat and perfect and everything, but this area won't be especially visible, even if you're modelling the car with the top down. And if you're modelling it with the top up, it's not going to be visible at all.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
What matters is the parts go together. This side did also require some pressure and a bit of holding, even after those modifications, but it's nothing too bad. The butt end of the Steyr comes next. You can see the left side of the car does kind of lean inwards a little bit, which is most likely an error on my part. What a fool. Also, the frame is a little bit loose, but that's easily fixed. This rear part should help straighten out the inward leaning side part a bit, and it's pretty easy to install. You may have to apply a little bit of pressure to counteract the inward leaning side, if your side is indeed leaning inward. The windscreeny bit comes next, and in theory, this should just drop right into place. It didn't though, so I had to do a bit of plastic surgery.
That's not what plastic surgery is, Herbert.
Sure it is. There's a tab on the bottom of this that should slot into a hole in the floor, and I shaved that down a bit so it fits easier. I also clipped the corners of the inner wall bit, which seems to have made it fit a bit better. This probably won't be visible from the outside, and it just makes it fit a bit better. It's a good idea to test fit as you go, especially if you're modelling it with the top up. You don't want the windshield part to be creating gaps along the sides. Eventually, I glue it into place. I wouldn't say that was the most challenging thing I've ever done, but it was a bit more work than I would really expect from this kind of thing. Anyway, I've decided that it's time to add the front of the vehicle. The radiator goes into place here, and it makes sense to put that on before the bonnet, or the hood, or whatever the Germans call it.
Pretty sure you said that exact same thing last week, Herbert.
Yep, I probably did. At any rate, The bonnet goes into place pretty easily, though it did require a little bit of pressure to get it to sit properly in place. Next, headlamps, and these are a bit fiddly because of their small size, but you've probably handled smaller parts, and they're not too hard to get into the mounting holes. Then, why not add the roof? Well, you might not want to add this if you're building the top-down version, and the instructions for that will be slightly different because they include the interior. I'm building mine with the roof though, so I put the roof on.
That's just so you don't have to add crew figures, Herbert.
What matters is that the roof is easy to put on. It doesn't really have any solid keying, and you can move it side to side a bit, so be careful of that. I follow this with the front bumper, which conveniently includes the ball-on-stick width markers in the one piece. Those are tiny in this scale, so it would be kind of annoying if they were separate parts. Next, I add this jerry can holder, which for some reason has a jerry can on it. There wasn't any keying for this, which I suppose is good if you want to leave this off. You won't have any holes to fill in before painting. It's not like it's hard to get into the right spot anyway. Then, I add the jack. This part has a helpful little notch on the bottom, so that it fits over the hinge for the door. You may still need to do a bit of nudging, but it does go into place rather easily. On the other side, this shovel. Again, there's no keying, which is nice if you would prefer no shovel. I'm not sure this is at exactly the right angle here, but it is there, and my crew, as invisible as they are, will not be lacking when they need a shovel. At this point in the build stream, I said something like, "Oh, I've forgotten to add the wheels. I don't suppose anybody would notice." Good thing this is recorded and I can pretend I didn't forget. These wheels are really easy to put on. There's no keying or anything and they just kind of slide onto the axle-y bits. You may need to apply a bit of pressure, but you shouldn't really have any trouble with them. Though do be sure that you are putting the correct wheels in the right places. The wheels for the rear and the spares in the middle, assuming you're building the late variant like I am, are the same. The front wheels are different. It is quite a visibly obvious difference though, so it's really easy not to do this wrong. With that, the Steyr Heavy Car in 15mm scale from the Plastic Soldier Company is completed. One of 5 is anyway. I was considering also building the top-down version, maybe even an early one. The main difference between early and late, at least visibly, that I can see, is that the early version doesn't have the spare wheels. I didn't get around to building a second one of these with the top down when I streamed this, because it actually took a lot longer to build the first one than I'd expected. Not an excessively long time, mind you. I mean, it's not going to take you a whole lot of time to build all 5 of these. It's just the way streaming goes, things just tend to take a bit longer. Anyway, if you do want to see me build a top-down version of this, or the early version as well, let me know in the comments below. This was a pretty fun kit to put together. Sure, it was a little bit annoying and time-consuming to have to mess with the side parts, and I did spend a fair bit of time just holding them in place while the glue set, but really, that's far from the worst thing you could encounter in a kit. I think the result is rather nice too. It's pretty well detailed for its size, and relatively easy to put together. I'm not sure how useful Steyrs are in games like Flames of War. They're probably pretty good for moving Germans about the field, but maybe a little bit less good for fighting tanks. Either way, I think they'll look great on the table, especially when they've been painted.
Are you going to paint them, Herbert?
Probably not anytime soon. One day. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you'd like to watch me building kits like this one live on stream, head on over to my Twitch channel. The link is in the description below. If you haven't already done so, why not subscribe here on YouTube? That would be a really cool thing to do. Or if you have the means, and you want to help a Herbert Erpaderp do Herbert Erpaderp things, in addition to seeing my videos a bit early before there's any ads, consider becoming a patron. You can find links to Patreon, and all of my other things like Discord and social media, in the description below. As always, I shall return soon, so until then, be excellent to each other, have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching. Farewell.